Video editors require a serious commitment to start with. When you're learning an editor and then moving across them, it feels like you're relearning a new language. So today I'll be comparing two titans of the industry standard, Adobe's Premiere Pro and Apple's Final Cut Pro. We're going to break down the pros, cons, and which will give the best end result for your video editing workflows. Now let's talk about Final Cut Pro. Final Cut Pro is one of the best editors available on the market, especially made by Apple, because this video editor enables you to have the speed and optimization that most editors don't have. When you are working with heavy footages, generally Final Cut Pro will handle that better because of the sheer optimization that Apple puts in the software. You also notice that it is much more stable because more updates are pushed that are quite minimal, which means that when you are using Final Cut Pro daily, you won't notice significant changes in your workflow with more updates coming overall. And it's also available on the iPad, which means that you are able to use it on a Mac on your workstation, but also an iPad when you're working on the go. Especially with the live multicam feature, it is very useful in studios. But also Final Cut Pro is very easy to use. It has a slower learning curve, which means that when you are a beginner, Final Cut Pro just feels welcoming with the interface, having just a better, more structured feeling. You know where the controls are and you don't feel like Apple is hiding any drastic features from you. It's just available in your front of your face and it feels very smooth to edit in. But now let's talk about Premiere Pro. It's like the mirror of Final Cut Pro because it has more aggressive features, which means that intelligence features, AI, and also things like the captions feature is much better than what you find on Final Cut Pro. Features like cross-compatibility with Windows, macOS, and even Linux, which means that your team can have more flexibility with working footages on the go, especially when you're working with more than one people. And it's much more traditional compared to Final Cut Pro's magnetic timeline. You also notice with Premiere Pro that it has more integration with Creative Cloud apps, which means if you are an avid user of Premiere Pro, then you're using Media Encoder, Audition, After Effects, it just feels natural that they combine together. And when you're working with different departments, this will feel much more smoother than Final Cut Pro can offer in terms of integration. Now we're breaking the cons too. For the flaws of these two editors are pretty clear. For Final Cut Pro, the main issue that you will have is the walled garden that Apple sets for the features, especially slow development. When you are using Final Cut Pro, you feel that the features aren't as advanced as Premiere Pro or DaVinci Resolve. The slow development means that tools like color grading are lackluster compared to DaVinci Resolve. It feels like child's play, and features like intelligence aren't as deep or aggressive as Premiere Pro, which means that Apple seem like they're really behind in terms of AI in their spaces. You also see that Final Cut Pro is less optimized for more platforms because when you're working with Final Cut Pro and then exporting it in ProRes codecs, generally when you're moving into the other platforms, it drops the resolution and also the quality. It's much harder to work in those projects because Final Cut Pro is not available on Windows or Linux. Now for Premiere Pro, the flaws are pretty clear. Now, usually feature-rich applications rely on old code, and Premiere Pro is no exception to that, which means that there are more bugs and issues, especially with media management that is pretty unstable when you are editing. You also see that the learning curve is much more steep compared to Final Cut Pro because more menus and toolbars makes the features more hidden for beginners, and the workspaces feature is far more cluttered than most people would expect. Now, pricing is a sensitive subject for most people, and I think that pricing determines which editor you use overall. Now, for Final Cut Pro, it is available as a one-time subscription at $300, or you can use the Apple Creator Studio subscription for $13 a month, which is a far better deal than other video editors can offer. Now, Premiere Pro takes a different story. When you are using it, it costs $300 a year, and it isn't as budget friendly as Final Cut Pro. you see that when you are using Premiere Pro and then you stop in the middle of subscription, you are going to get a penalty that will cost a lot and isn't as worth as when you are using Final Cut Pro. Now for the closing and the verdict itself, I think that Final Cut Pro generally wins the areas that I deem most important. Speed, because I'm not a content creator that only works here for money. I just do this for fun, and that's the reason that I want to edit much more faster. I don't want to spend time generally focusing on these videos. Now Premiere Pro is much suited for professionals who are going to focus on using industry techniques and actually doing this for their money. Now every video editor offers the same core features but just packaged differently. But I think that when you are working in the industry, not just a casual user, you will need to learn all of them because you don't know which industry you are working on and you will have to learn new skills. But for casual users, I think that Final Cut Pro still gives you that industry standard feeling that you would want, but packaged in a way that is more simple for you to learn. So that's my video for today. Thank you for watching and I'll see you in the next one.